Today, I want to talk to you about the things ChatGPT 5 will not fix. Why? I don't have a special magic magnifying glass and a magic time machine that allow me to go and examine closely what it will be like in the future. Instead, I have a thorough understanding based on lots of company and boardroom experience of how business is actually using AI. And I know that most of the issues that we're seeing today with AI are human and organizational problems, not AI problems. And so when the model makers make these big claims about how incredible their new models are, I always filter them back through the actual organizational realities. I want to go through with you a few of the specific problem areas that have very boring solutions that I see over and over and over again in companies that ChatGPT 5 is not likely to magically fix. Number one, this is the biggest single one I see. Magic wand thinking about your data. Over and over and over again, I see the fallacy. We just thought we could give the data to whatever LLM it is that they're using. They're on the Azure cloud, they're using Copilot, they're using Gemini, they're using ChatGPT. We just thought we could give it to the LLM and it will fix it. No, it will not fix it. In fact, the 80-20 rule is literally true here. 78% of firms, according to TechRadar, that struggle with AI point to data readiness as the root cause. Data readiness is not something that an LLM will magically fix. There is a school of thought in the more advanced sort of researchy side of AI that eventually this will get fixed because AI will become so good at recognizing the mess of human data and have such big context windows and so much processing power that it will just read over all of this mess and magically make sense of it for us. And that is often voiced as if it is present and here now and able to do that work today. None of those things are true. And there's a lot of concrete reasons why, even if that were true, it would still be a bad idea to give your AI bad data. The cleaner your data inputs, the more likely you are to have a strong AI experience. Do not use magic wand thinking about your data. I have been in situations where people will tell me, what is wrong with my data? And I will look at the data and it has no semantic meaning to an LLM. It's just a blob of data that is like uncategorized, unorganized. That's the issue right there. Like, you don't have to look farther for a problem at that point. Like, if you're telling me that you have thousands and thousands and thousands of documents with this sort of undifferentiated, like gigantic blob of text, and you're expecting it to make sense of all of it, it's not gonna, because you haven't given it any sense of the semantic meaning in the larger data structures. You have no sub-corpus semantic structures to work with. And by corpus, I mean the whole collection of documents. You should have some sense of meaning. So for example, if it's in a Wikipedia, maybe your internal wiki has different sections that have some semantic meaning. And then there's article titles that give it, they're worth separating out. They give you a sense of where you are in the wiki. And that's just a very simple example. If you're dealing with official documents like health records, you're going to have semantic meaning for the patient name and semantic meaning for the diagnosis and this and that. The more you get really, really clear about what data you want to convey, the easier it is going to be to actually use AI to pull the data. The second issue I see is closely correlated. Magic wand thinking about models. People tend to assume they need faster, better, stronger reasoner models. I am a big advocate of moving your daily driver off of ChatGPT 4.0 onto a stronger model. I have said so explicitly. Go to O3, go to Gemini 2.5 Pro, go to Opus 4. But as much as that's helpful for personal productivity, it does not mean that every single aspect of a AI job has to be done by the best reasoner model available. Look, if you just want to get columns sorted correctly in a PDF, it does not have to be sorted by the best reasoner model on the planet. If you just want to carefully go through a nicely delineated data set and extract all of the values associated with a particular firm, that doesn't necessarily have to be a reasoner model either. In fact, that might not even be an LLM. That might just be a fancy SQL query. People tend to overpower their pipelines and they pay for it. They're basically paying a Ferrari premium. They're paying so that they feel like they've got the best model, which they think is what intelligence is. But really, intelligence is well-organized data the right model applied against that data with the right queries, the right guardrails, and the right evals surfaced in a way that a human can find useful. Does that make sense? It's the right data. It's the right model constrained in ways that enable it to do useful work, surfaced in a way that a human can understand and use. That's how intelligence actually works in the workplace. And do you notice how small a role a model plays in that? ChatGPT 5 may be the best Ferrari in the business when it comes out, but it's a tiny part of that overall flow of value. And so you have to think more broadly if you are trying to build interesting AI work. The third issue is vague or shifting objectives, a human problem, again and again and again and again. You need to have a meaningful business KPI that you are nailing your AI project to that solves a specific business problem. And the business problem has to matter. If your business problem doesn't matter, I've seen over and over again, people give up, they walk away. If your business problem matters but isn't tied to a KPI, so it's just annoying to a small section of the team, also not going to get prioritized. It has to matter to the organization, be measurable in a business KPI, and you have to nail that objective down publicly every time you can in order to keep the objective from moving and shifting when you inevitably run into problems. AI projects are a series of nested problem sets that you continue to solve until you actually get to value. And you're not going to have the patience to go through those nested problem sets if you don't have a clear KPI that the business cares about, that the C-suite cares about, that they are going to move. That's really what leads people to persist. It's what leads teams to persist. The fourth issue I see is treating AI strategy as separate from business strategy. It's a subtle one. Again, a model doesn't fix this. AI strategy cannot be separate from business strategy if you want to avoid wasting budget. If you want to actually make progress on becoming an AI native business, you cannot have the AI strategy in the corner with the AI guy or AI gal, and that's what they do. You cannot just do AI as a project. You actually have to integrate AI strategy into your business strategy in a way that makes sense, which requires executives taking the time to understand how large language models work at a fairly granular level so that they can see the leverage points in their business where it applies. Let's say that you are working in a business that you don't think has anything to do with AI. Let's say customer service is paramount in this business. It's all about putting your people in front of the customer with a white glove experience. I see executives in those situations often tell me, I mean, AI might be useful here and there, but it's not transformational for our business. Like we're not buying the hype. Wrong. There are going to be people in your business and in competitor businesses that see opportunities that you will miss because of that attitude. You need to recognize that just because your value proposition is very resilient to AI, like congratulations, like you have a human touch, that's going to be very valuable. Love that. But the back office piece, there is no reason that doesn't need an entire AI strategy focused on cutting down your business KPI costs. And by the way, that doesn't just mean firing people. That may also mean simply keeping track of all of the items that you sell more efficiently, or being able to actively query against your data sets more efficiently, or being able to thoughtfully price more efficiently. There's a half a dozen things you can do in the back office. It's document management, right? Like that's a very boring thing, but it becomes a really critical piece of running the business well, and AI can help. Number 5, over-relying on off-the-shelf foundation models. People think that a generic LLM will fit every niche domain. And if it doesn't, they assume immediately they have to train their own model, but they don't even know what training their own model means. Like I've had people in almost every conversation say, do we need to train a model for this? And in a sense, I sort of blame the model makers. They've made it feel believable and they've made it feel plausible to train the models. It's not an easy task to do. I don't recommend it. Instead, think about your data and the constraints and guardrails that enable your model to flourish. Think about your architecture. Think about your prompt engineering. Think about whether you need a data set that's formulated as a RAG or not, a retrieval augmented generation data set or not. Think about the degree to which you need to help the model have the context to process the job appropriately and what providing that context means. But people don't. They say, well, the model should know it. Like there's this, again, this fallacy that the model is intelligent because of what the model knows, when in reality, the model at a granular level is intelligent because of the way it transforms. These are transformer-based architectures, and the intelligence comes from the way it transforms and predicts the next token. It is actually not what it magically knows. We think that because of the way it's trained and reinforcement learned to be helpful. But it's not actually true when you're building production systems. Number 6, ignoring integrations and ignoring operations for AI. Teams will demo a proof of concept and they will discover they have no evals, they have no monitoring, they have no rollbacks, they don't have a way for the model to get pulled back out of production if there's an issue. They don't know what the bar is to reach production. If it reaches production, they don't know how to monitor it. They don't know what tool sets they are integrated with and therefore what vulnerabilities they have if those tool sets change. They don't know how they're going to refresh the underlying data sets. They just think, again, the model will do it. If we put the model into production, the model will solve the problem. That is exactly the mindset that had Air Canada in court over bereavement policy that their AI made up. You cannot ignore AI operations. In fact, I would argue if you want to look for a career path, getting into AI operations, figuring out how to stably and safely deploy AI in production and pull it back and handle sandboxes, it's a big deal. It is not a trivial thing. And it is something that most organizations ignore at their peril. And I have to remind people over and over again that this has the characteristics of software. You cannot deploy it as if it is not software and expect it to work. Okay. Number 7, similarly, no human in the loop. This was the Klarna story famously, but I see it in other cases where you have overeager CEOs who have read the LinkedIn hype and they are like, we don't need these people. I want to hire you so that people will lose their jobs and I can cut this team. And they don't realize that Klarna had to rehire their CS team. They don't realize that if you do not have an ability to go to a human being and actually find out what the real truth is when AI goes off the rails, you're inviting hallucinations, you're inviting compliance breaches, you're inviting brand damage, you're inviting a customer experience that costs you the heart of the business. And so it's really, really important when you design systems to anticipate non-happy paths. This is just what we drill in if we're in product management. Don't just anticipate the happy path, anticipate the miserable path. How do you make that more graceful, less miserable, more likely to retain you, the customer? Similarly with AI, when the AI goes wrong and the human knows it at the end of the conversation and the AI is not admitting it, how do you get the human help? People don't spend enough time thinking about that. They expect the AI to be 100% accurate when they would never expect a human to be 100% accurate. That's not a reasonable bar. Something can be tremendously useful and only 87% correct. And so depending on your application, you may be in a situation where the AI is 87% correct and you need a human for the other 13%. And your job is to design a system that switches cleanly between those two use cases. I see very little investment from most businesses in figuring out that number and how you solve that problem. Number 8, underinvesting in change management. Massive issue. People just assume that if they put the AI in front of the team, it's going to magically work. Again, model makers are somewhat guilty here. They try and tell you over and over again, like the leaks we've seen on ChatGPT 5 this week. Leak after leak after leak. It's the next thing since sliced bread. It's going to be incredible. It's amazing. People are going to go through this cycle all over again where they think that they can just give organizations ChatGPT 5 and it will magically do wonders for their bottom line. And that may be convenient for the model makers from a sales perspective, but it's not true. You have to go through a change management and upskilling process to get people using AI. Otherwise, the chatbot loads nicely and they interact with it for like 2 or 3 basic tasks a week, and you don't come close to realizing the power of what the model can do for you. Not close. And yet, most organizations are investing more in the model and more in the AI technical stack than they are in the people. They're not investing in the change management. They're not investing in the upskilling. And it's sort of like pulling teeth to get them to do that, to be fair, because no one talks about it, right? Like the model makers are emphasizing the tech, the tech, the tech, the tech. And of course, you're going to listen to them and think it's the tech. And you're not thinking about it from the fact that this is a new general purpose technology. And we need people change in order to usefully take advantage of this new technology. It's not like you can expect that people will be put on what is effectively an entirely new digital assembly line and told to just figure it out and it's just going to magically work. Like we would not do that in a factory. Why would we do it here? And yet that's what we're doing. Number 9, forgetting the total cost of ownership. So often people they don't think about the token costs. They don't think about the developer sustainment cost. They don't think about the hit by a bus problem where one developer is doing this, and if that developer, God forbid, has something happen to them, then they're done. They don't think about the sustainment cost of evaluating these models in production. None of that. They're just like, can we get this to production? If we can get it to production, great. We'll worry about the rest later. Because there's such a forced march, risk on approach to beating your competitors to market. And I get it. It is a existential imperative. Like, you have to be able to get AI into market. So I understand the incentive there. I don't think they're incorrect, but understanding cloud inference costs, understanding how vector DB queries works, understanding how cost guardrails can be maintained is really important, or you can be upside down on your margins really fast. And that is just for serving the model if you're serving it to customers. If you are serving it internally, it is also an issue of making sure that you're extending your use cases across more of the internal footprint in a cost sustainable manner. If you are trying to build subsequent systems, it is also recognizing that AI systems take more sustaining in production than traditional software. You have to evaluate them continuously. You can't just test them in QA and forget them. In fact, I would argue the 80-20 ratio flips, and 80% of your time should be spent looking at production use cases, because you can't adequately test the model inherently for all use cases before you launch. You have to hit a certain threshold and say, we're going to launch, and keep evaluating. And that means more sustainment cost that no one tends to factor in. The total cost of ownership is largely a broken calculator at most of the organizations I work with. It's bad. And again, the model makers say the tech will fix it implicitly and explicitly over and over and over again. And they're sort of victims of their own success, because normally when you say that, people discount what you say because everyone has 70 years of advertising in Western markets in their heads, and they always discount claims. But these guys have actually done it, right? They've taught the rocks to think. They've developed an incredible new general purpose technology. It's really, really, really good. And so our discount disappears with model makers. And we think, well, maybe they're actually right. Maybe they're not hyping it. Maybe this is really this good because they've done this incredible job with this product, which they have. Like, none of this should be taken to say that, like, these LLMs aren't incredible and can't do great work. It's about how you set them up to do great work in business. And that's the part where there's a missing stair. People miss that. The last one I want to call out, number 10, security and privacy shortcuts. We'll worry about where the data lives later. That's a classic one. Or, I'm not sure what the security requirements are. Let's just get started. Let's get it up and we'll figure it out. Or, I haven't looked at the terms of service for the vendor. I don't know how they relate to the foundation model maker. I'll let someone else figure that out. You can't do that. This is one of those things where you have to know the story of the data from day one, because the risk of misuse is too high. This is not a case where it really helps you to go faster to ignore those things. And partly, it doesn't help you to go faster because solutions exist. You can read the terms of service quickly and easily. You can quickly understand which secure cloud environment you want to deploy into. You can become compliant and secure with relatively little effort 2.5 years into the AI revolution. So there is no excuse. You can't say going faster is a reason for this. You have to take security and privacy seriously. And again, this is one where businesses are of two minds. The scrappy, startup-y, ones in a desperate position tend to be like, you know what? We'll deal with it later. Whereas the ones that are more enterprisey tend to be like, we'll do security and privacy, and we'll do nothing but security and privacy for 6 months, and then eventually we'll go on to the next thing. That is its own risk, because it's actually not that hard to deploy a secure and private AI at this point. It does not take 6 months in most cases for most footprints. And so if you're spending that long on it, you are probably using what I would call from Amazon day two thinking, where you're like looking at it as a process rather than looking to the outcome you want to drive. So it is possible to take this last 10th one and to push it too far the other way and be too over-obsessed with security and privacy. And I say that because we know this is an issue, and the cloud providers are heavily incentivized to make this something that is solvable by businesses at scale very quickly, because they want your business. Google Cloud and Azure see this as the best chance they've had in years to steal business from AWS, because they are farther along on the AI side. They are absolutely going to be obsessed with delivering for you a secure private environment to your spec. So there's no excuse for that. Like, you should get it quickly, and then you should move on. Okay. I hope that you look through these 10, which, by the way, these 10 are not an exhaustive list. There's other stuff too. The CEO not knowing how to use AI is my favorite secret 11th one. Like, that is a problem. I've mentioned it before. If the CEO doesn't know how to use AI, it's really hard to drive AI transformation, period. It's not a general purpose technology that works if half the people at the top of the chain don't really know how to use it. There are lots of other examples. I want you to look at these examples and I want you to notice how many of the examples here are people and process, and how many of them are technical architecture, not just models, or data, not just models. Again and again and again, I've called that out. This is why I continue to say new models are great. I'm glad we're getting them. It's a phenomenal time to be alive and working, but they're not magic bullets. They don't magically solve everything. Instead, they help you when you have good architecture, when you've solved the problems I've outlined here, to make more return on investment than you would otherwise. A better model in a clean data environment with an excellent human in the loop safety net, with good MLOps deployment practices, with a good AI strategy is going to go farther, right? Like it's like putting an engine in a properly constructed car. You're actually going to be able to get the most out of it, as opposed to the people who are trying to jam the engine into the janky T model Ford and be like, well, we've got a Formula One engine in here, just floor it, right? Like, I'm sure it'll work. No, it's not going to work. Take the time to set your business up to be ready for new models. And by the way, ChatGPT 5 is going to be great, but there's going to be another model along in a month, 2 months, 3 months. We are in the middle of an exponential curve. And so we're going to see more exponential improvements. That is why it's so important to focus on these durable aspects of change management for business effectively. There's no other substitute. I hope that you have enjoyed thinking about all the ways that ChatGPT 5 will not solve all your problems magically. Cheers.